Hey, babe, and welcome to the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. This is the place to talk about how we're ditching our bad habits, long-held patterns, and limiting beliefs. The time is now to stop outsourcing and start insourcing our happiness and bliss. Am I right? I'm Heather Lowe, your empowering life coach, ready to guide you on this incredible journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and freedom. If you're feeling stuck in the cycle and wondering what life could look like if you liberated yourself, well, I've got something just for you. I created a free guide to help you take those first empowering steps towards a healthier and more fulfilling life, the one that you desire. This guide is packed with practical tools, mindset shifts, journal prompts that dig deep, and real-life insights to support you in making changes that truly stick. So if you're ready to explore what's possible, head over to ditchthedrink.com and grab your free guide today. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And if you want a group of babes to journey with, I've got you there too. We're staying connected through the Ditch the Drink Insider app with private forums, weekly group calls, master classes, live workshops, book clubs, in real life events, and more. And the best part is you can join for free with a 7-day trial. I'd love to continue the conversation on the inside. Now, let's dive into today's episode and get inspired to create the life you deserve, like so many other babes are doing right now. Here we go. Hello, Peripatia podcast listeners. I'm so excited to bring you somebody who I just told her was like a celebrity to me, Amy Allen Clark. Somebody I followed on Instagram for a long time who I thought had a really big following, and I could see why, because Amy, you're so relatable, adorable, obviously smart. You have so many facets. I think because we're both readers, I was definitely attracted to your book gang and the stuff that you were doing there. But also you've got a health journey that you talk about, and more recently, a sober journey as well. So this is awesome. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Oh my goodness. I wish I could put you in my ears every morning. That makes me feel so good. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. So will you start back and start actually just sharing your journey of how you got on Instagram and how you started doing a following and what you do and what your background is?
Yeah, sure. So I went to college for dietetics. I was thinking I was going to be a nutritionist or something like that, and ended up, my husband, who's my high school sweetheart, he and I both dropped out of school, got married. He was pursuing a .com, and he just went after his goals. We ended up on the East Coast with his job, and things were going pretty well for a while. We were at the height of everything happening, but then anyone who is of a certain age may remember the .com bomb happened, and my husband ended up losing his job while we were out on the East Coast, and he applied everywhere. We could not find work anywhere. We had been unemployed for quite a long time. And then he ended up getting a position back in near our hometown, which was just very strange. So we ended up making our way back to this area, but we were really struggling financially and just could not seem to make ends meet. And I felt like because I had to return back to work that first year that we were living out there with my son, I really missed out on getting to be a stay-at-home mom. And I was really, really determined that I was going to make that work. So I started checking out books about the Depression era and really looking to the original homemakers, how did they stretch a budget in a way that they were able to, kind of meet where they were at that time in history. And I started gathering all these little tidbits of information, oh, did you know you could save this, or you could reuse this, or here's another idea of something you can do with something that's laying around your house. And people kept saying you really should write a book. And I was I just can't picture myself, going after something like that. And I think part of it is imposter syndrome. I didn't finish school. I'm not smart enough to do that. But I could start a website, and that's what my husband does. So he could help me get that going. And maybe we have a spot where women who are looking to try to make ends meet in a difficult season could find that. And at that point in time, this was in 2004, there was like terrible resources. Like you would go and you would go on a site and it would be like scrolling for days and days, like one giant file, or you would find the best information on discussion boards, which is probably still true today, but it was really, really hard to find information. And my husband had this great design background, so he put together a website for me. At that point in time, I was just like writing all of these little articles and talking about how people could save money. And one of my big claims to fame was that I love to shop at Aldi. And at that point, like there was no one really shopping there. And I would go with just $200 and feed my family for a whole month and write these recipes up and share them. And I had a little blog that called the Aldi Queen, and I would share, how people could save money that way. And so I was doing all of these little things. And that was a very niche community. At that point in time, it really attracted people that were already visiting those forums. But what happened was in 2008, the recession happened. And that was like, my Mariah Carey on Ice moment. Like I pop out and I'm like, hey guys, like I'm here.
You've been dying all this time writing your little Aldi blog.
I'm like, did you know you could do this? Did you know you could do this?
Yeah.
And there were so many brands that were looking for people that were like in that space. And I was just an early adopter to everything, partly because my husband's in tech, but partly because I'm curious about how to build a following. So I was one of the early beta testers of Pinterest, and I worked for companies like Walmart, for Kenmore, I worked for Kellogg's, like all these big brand names. And I was teaching people how to use their products, appliances, food products, craft. I got really into craft. I felt like craft's going to have a moment here. I even remember being at a Walmart meeting where they were talking about potentially getting rid of their craft department. And I was like, I think Pinterest is going to be huge. I think it would be a huge mistake to get rid of that department. It ended up being a really successful run for me working for them in craft. I ended up selling products that were craft related. I had a knitting kit at Joann's, like all these just very odd little side projects. But we got ourselves out of a serious debt situation. And we were able to really turn our financial future around. And then I ended up writing a book called The Good Life for Less, where I shared how we did what we did. It's just basically a manual that I would give to someone who was newly married. Like, how do I do this? Like, how am I supposed to establish a budget? And really beginner basics on how to make that work for your family. And so I've been doing this since 2004. So it's a very long time. And part of being an early adapter is also knowing when you need to switch formats, right? Our moms were not hanging out online anymore. I remember the days of just spending long conversations and thoughtful conversations with people that followed my work and still follow my work all these years later. But we just don't work in that kind of environment anymore. We're lucky if someone can leave something beyond an emoji for a comment, right? We're in a very different age. And so I had hit a speed bump really with my life and my health journey and started to realize like I have an opportunity to switch formats. Either I fold and retire, which I would feel really proud of the work that I did. I could have done that for sure and felt good about where I was. But also I can never keep my brain busy, like quiet, I guess. Like my brain is always busy. And the idea of letting go of being a pioneer of something is really strange for me. So we were starting to, kind of match where my readers were headed, which was they were maybe less doing crafting, but I did see a lot of people enjoying our book section. And I had always talked about reading, and that was something that I loved. And we basically separated that into a community on its own. Like, oh, I'll just make that into a Facebook group because we have a lot of people that read. And it grew into, I think we were around 5,500 Facebook members. And it's like, okay, now we have a separate community. What can we do? How can I funnel this into a business? And I had been doing a book club for many years, but what if we made that more special? Like, what if we really enhance that for readers. And, with my health challenges, I had to start contemplating like, what can I do that's not so physical? And moving to voice for someone with a disability is really powerful. Like I could still share my message and do all the things that I was doing. I just had to learn to adapt to a different format. So now I podcast and run a book club and a community, and that has been the new thing. So I'm up here hiding in my bedroom, which you can see behind me, just talking to authors about their writing and learning from them. And because so many people have felt pulled to my work for whatever reason for this long, a lot of them are still along since my kids were little, and now, kids in their 20s, which is crazy, to feel a connection with someone that long is really special. And I feel really, really grateful for the people that have stuck around through all the different variations of Amy.
How wonderful. I love it. I knew some of your background. I did not know all of your background. So this is really fun for me. And it's no wonder. I value homemaking so much. And I had two grandmas that were homemakers, and I just shared with you, one of them passed away this morning, 101 plus years old. She also worked outside the home, 8 children. My other grandma was a full-time homemaker with 7 kids at home. And I've always treasured homemaking. I think it is so, so important. And I think often it's unpaid, but for me, like, I love to decorate for the holidays. I love to host gatherings. I love like all these little things that make a house a home and that provide a safe place for family and for your children and their friends. And I think it's such important work. And I think this day and age, sometimes we're in this like boss babe, go to work outside the home. Something different is really valued. And I really value both. I'm an entrepreneur, businesswoman like you. And also I need time and space for homemaking and even for tinkering and for moving things around and just creating the kind of the right lighting and the right food and the right home that people want to come home to. I think it's so important. So I love that your family was in need. You took your skills and then you turned around and you literally did both with it. Like you valued your work as homemaker and you're going to figure out a way to make money at it. And you did it and you saved yourself. That is like such a heroine's journey. I just love that. And I see you with like a cape, like a superhero cape for having done that. And then also being a pioneer, like how cool with Pinterest and Walmart and all this stuff. Obsessed with that, of course, because at that time I was raising my kids too, same age, I'm sure. And had my little blog spot, family blog, to keep family that was out of town and out of state informed on their little developments and what we were doing. And we want to connect, we want to share, we want to document like kind of what's happening in our lives when we're raising kids. So I relate to that so much. Then you went and pivoted though. You recognized that the world was changing in the way that we connect. And then you figured out this new way. And of course, I'm obsessed with reading and books and authors. I mean, I only started this podcast so I could force people into having conversations with me that I wanted to talk to. So 70% of people are authors, including yourself, right? So this is just my tricky way to get to talk to all the writers I want to talk to. You keep referencing your health journey. Can you share with me what that is, when that started, and let's dive a little bit deeper in this because this is a huge part of your story.
Yeah, I occasionally speak about this. So I love to help the Ehlers-Danlos Foundation, and May is the time of recognition for what that is. I always had some level of health problems my whole life, unexplainable, weird things that had always like plagued me throughout life. Like I bruised easy. I was run down a lot. I got sick a lot. Like I just always felt like I was fighting stuff. And I had a really great childhood. Like I was very active. I loved to do dance. And when I got older, I loved to do yoga. These are things that you may hear from people with EDS because one of the traits is being very flexible. And so these little hobbies that I was into, it makes sense because I was very good at it because I was very flexible. In my 30s, I started to have some difficulties with the work that I was doing. So a lot of the projects that I did for clients, like I was kind of explaining a little bit, were craft and food driven. So I did all my own food photography, and I also would shoot all the tutorials. And knitting and doing photography for food requires a lot of fine motor movement that I don't think people always understand. There's a lot of leaning, a lot of heavy equipment, doing detail things with tiny tweezers. You're always like doing things like that, as well as like all the photo editing, which requires a lot of mousing, like doing things with your mouse, and a lot of movement with your arm. I remember a Christmas where I was really struggling. I think it was around 38 to do my Christmas cards. I just could not seem to write them. Like my hands kept cramping, and I was having a lot of problems gripping a pencil and a pen. And so I was getting very frustrated. I remember just being like, forget this. I'm done. Like, I don't even care. I don't know if they'll even make it. Some of them came back to me. Like, that's how bad my penmanship was, because I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm having a lot of pain in my hands. And I started going into the doctor and just being like, there's something wrong. Like, I don't know what's wrong. It was traveling up through to my elbow. So they were thinking, well, you do a lot at your computer. You probably have carpal tunnel or radial tunnel. And I went through a whole bunch of tests. Everything kept coming back negative. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I was going to dance class still, like in my 30s. I had a really exciting dance class. Again, kept my brain really busy. You would learn choreography every day. There would be like a new thing, and I was really excited about it. And I lived at the gym. I would be there for 2 or 3 classes if they were available. I loved going there. And all of a sudden, I started to just have injury after injury. And it was just the most infuriating thing, because it was like really throwing off my rhythms. Like, I'm a perfectionist. I like my day to be a certain way. Everything is starting to fall apart. All of a sudden I have a knee going out. Like, I have no idea how this is happening. Like, my neck would get thrown out. I would just be like completely exhausted after these classes, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. So every day I had a different brace on. I had no idea if I was bracing correctly. Like, no one had any information for me. No one knew what was wrong with me. And I was just in the pits. And I will say, I'm grew up religious, but I'm not as called to it as I used to be. And for some reason, I decided to join a Bible study. And I think it was just because I felt so depressed. Like, I'm like, anytime that I'm going through something particularly trying like this, the thing I go back to is religion. Like, it's where I feel comforted. And I joined this women's Bible study, and I showed up, and every day I was showing up with something. So I had like a finger brace, and then I'd have like a wrist brace. And then I came in and I was bracing my knee. And the lady that was running the class, she started looking at me, and she was like, every time you're here, it seems like something else is being braced. Do you have something going on? Like, do you know what's going on with you? And I was like, I don't know. Every day there's something, like something pops up, and I cannot figure out what's going on. I've never had any problems. I'm very physically active. Like, I have no reason to know why all of this is happening. And she's like, I'm going to take you through a few really strange questions. And it was like, can you touch the floor? Can you, bend your thumb this direction? Can you do this? And I'm like, this is the weirdest conversation I have ever had. And she said, Amy, I think you have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a condition that I have, one of my siblings has, and I think you need to go in and talk to your doctor. And I'm like, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome? I've never heard of this. So I went home and I'm looking it up, and I'm like, this feels weird. When you start reading something and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the things that have happened to me. Now we have TikTok and a lot of other formats and platforms to like find information in your community. But at that point, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure that's a double-edged sword, right? But I'm like, I've never heard of this. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to my family at the dinner table, and I'm like, this person told me like she thought maybe this was happening with me. Like, how weird is that? And we were talking about, all our fun party tricks, and my kids are demonstrating party tricks too. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little strange. So we went in for a consultation for my kid who has ADHD, just a normal checkup. And at the end, I was supposed to, just also have my checkup, because we have one practitioner. And he's looking at me, and now I have a knee brace. Like, and I do think everyone thinks, oh, you're kind of a hypochondriac, right? Every time you come in, there's something else wrong with you. And my child, Ethan, said, hey, Mom, are you going to ask him about our flexibility? And I said, what? No, that's not the time. It's not the time to ask. And it was like a light bulb went on over our doctor's head. And he was like, oh my goodness. So he starts going through the same test. It's like, can you touch the floor? Can you do this? He starts stretching our skin, doing all of these things. And then he's like doing it to my children. And he was like, you all three have it. I think you need to meet with a specialist. Very strangely enough, in our very, very tiny town, the woman who is like the person who gives the gold stamp on everybody's file lives in our town. She was also someone who had a babysitting arrangement with one of my close friends. You know, you live in a small town, everybody knows each other. I was able to get her on the phone that day. She was like, you know, it sounds like it, you know, you can come in, but it's going to be at least a 5-month wait. So we sat around and waited for 5 months. And when we all came in, we all got diagnosed. So every family that has EDS, you have a 50-50 chance of passing that on to your children. And I ended up like walking out of there with a whole big file folder of information for me, for my son, my daughter. Like, it was so overwhelming. I was like, this is too much. Like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, our whole world got altered on that day.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing. And for everyone, you're in the Midwest now from the East Coast, right?
Yes.
So I mean, Midwest is best. So that's where the small town stuff happens. I just have to put in that plug. And yeah, feeling like a hypochondriac, feeling like a fool with a different brace that you're not sure of. And every day it's something different. I'm not necessarily religious either, but your story does feel like so many God winks in there, right? Like the Bible study and the woman and your son blurting that out at the right time. Thank goodness. Our children first to expose us for everything, right?
So true.
This is so timely for me because one of my daughters just had some testing the other day, and I came home in tears, totally overwhelmed and wondering about myself and my other daughter as well. I don't have all the answers yet, but tell me about, like, how did you walk out of that appointment a different person than when you walked in?
You know, I think anyone would tell you that when you get a diagnosis like that, there's relief. I'm not a hypochondriac, right?
Yeah.
There's an answer like to why all of these things have happened to me, and there is community on the other side. But it is also like, okay, great, because I'm a fixer. Let's get this wrapped up, right? Like, tell me what to do and I'll do all of those things and we will move on, right? This will be the end. And I think the shocking part about all of this was that it's like, you have this thing, we don't really know anything to tell you. Like, here's some like supplements that could be helpful. You could try these different things. But it was like, all of a sudden, it wasn't just that. It was kind of this big file of information also included, okay, that's just one part of the puzzle. Most people have many branches to their tree with EDS. So it's not a quickly solved puzzle. It's like, okay, your child has ADHD, autism, scoliosis, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, mast cell disease, POTS syndrome. Okay, that's your tree, right? Now we know all the branches. You have, all of these things. So it was like, okay, and you have to go and get diagnoses for all of the things. It's not just one thing. So it was like going down a tunnel that you could never come out of. Like, there's no time in the world where I can pursue all of these things. And how am I supposed to be a mom, run a business, be present for my family, take care of myself? But now I'm freaked out because my children have it, which is 1,000 times worse than finding out you have something, right? It's like, I can't fix this for you. And I feel sad that you have to go through this. And it was just truly one of the most overwhelming experiences as a mother, and disheartening, that there wasn't more there. They still haven't, for the particular type, there's lots of different kinds of EDS. I have the kind that is the one that doesn't have a genetic gene. So my children may hopefully have information at some point where they can make decisions about family planning. Like, okay, do I have the gene that is for this particular type. But at this time, there's still no gene that has actually been isolated that tells us like, okay, this is what has been going on. So all of this is kind of a trial by fire kind of experience, because everything that I am finding out and uncovering is like new for all of us. And I'm definitely more motivated, and it became quite consuming, because it's like, if I can solve this, I could solve a lot of problems for my children. And I would also solve a lot of things for myself. And I think the frustrating part is not getting so consumed by the research of getting a diagnosis and actually living a life that is adjacent to your diagnosis.
Oh, wow, Amy, I am hearing you. And also being a perfect, like, you're failing these tests. You want to get an A on these tests and you failed. There's something wrong with you in some way. And then you've passed it on and that's all your fault. I'm guessing that's how that kind of feels.
Exactly.
Being a person like you. Also, me being a person like you is like, wait, I'm perfect. I'm supposed to be perfect. I love to be perfect. I love to have everything right. And if there's a problem, we fix it and we move on. You've already shown that in the beginning of your story, right? Like, well, we'll just take care of this and then we'll carry on. And this is a different sort of lesson. This is a settling into a life in process, right? And I don't know what progress looks like. How does this EDS impact your daily life?
Yeah. So if I told you all the ways, I want to say that
Like, we don't have enough time.
I don't want to scare anyone, because I think everyone should know it is just like any other diagnosis. Maybe like autism has a spectrum. I do feel like EDS has a spectrum, right? There are people that have EDS and they're flexible and maybe they get injured a few times, but they pretty much live a full life. And I probably have some family members who have it that have never been, formally diagnosed, but lived a full life, never really dealing with it or having any major issues. And then there are other people who are bedbound, who are in wheelchairs, that have much, harder time with their EDS than other people. And actually, I've done pretty well until 2020. I got hit with COVID, and long COVID on top of having POTS syndrome. It just seemed to like really, really wreck everything that I had established. So no amount of my exercise and good nutrition and supplements and all the things that I had done could cancel out what was happening in my body. And I started to have a lot of issues, especially with my heart going crazy. I ended up on the cardiac floor for a week as they tried to investigate what was going on. I just was having a lot of issues. And since that time, it has become very, very challenging for me. I think the biggest issue in my case, which may not be the case for everyone, is that I have a lot of bones that dislocate. So my bones don't stay where they're supposed to. And those early injuries I was talking about are like minor compared to what I deal with now, which is, I might go to PT and a shoulder bone has rolled down into my chest, and a collarbone could get dislodged in the wrong spot, or a rib will misplace itself. And a lot of my time on the weekends is spent at my physical therapist, who created special hours just for me to come, which is very kind, because it takes her hours to put my bones back in place. It's very painful and really sad. It's very sad because, it's not something I can do myself. And sorry, it's a very taxing experience to go through. And I don't know every day when I wake up what I might deal with. And as a planner and a perfectionist, those are very frustrating aspects to my medical journey. And a lot of things were not told to me necessarily or highlighted, which is something I would like to bring up, is that menopause, it tends to, like a lot of women going through that, end up having more complications with EDS, where that's when they discover it. If they've been anything like me, I was in full-blown menopause and I did not know that. I had even gone through perimenopause. The doctor ended up running some tests and was like, you're actually halfway through the process of menopause. And I'm like, is there like what? Like I'm a child. How is this possible? And he was like, some women go through it earlier. One thing I didn't know about the early menopause aspect and also how it dovetails with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is that I was also at risk of osteoporosis because I had went into those hormonal changes so early. And then this year I found out that I'm in like really bad stages of osteoporosis, like someone who's in their 80s. And no one had ever explained I was at higher risk of that. And actually, my children, one of them has already been screened, and in their 20s, they're already in the osteopenia stage, which is something we will know for them and we will keep an eye out for, but is not something I had information to because we didn't know that that was something to worry about. So it's a lot of like side like hustles for EDS that I don't want to be on, but are becoming a part of my daily life. And, you know, it is a rather progressive disease. And that's something that is frustrating as well, because even I might have a good day now, I could have a harder time in years to come, you know, and that's a very difficult aspect of this because you know, especially with the menopause thing layered on top, it's just a lot. Anyone going through hormonal changes can speak to just that alone is a lot, but having all of that happening is like a terrible storm. And I've had to kind of adapt to all of these different things that are happening. And, you know, it's a lot. And yeah, every day is a challenge. And yeah, I fight for every day.
Mm. Wow. Physically, and you're in pain, and there's these physical things happening, and then emotionally, how to accept yourself in this state, and how to the anxiety of what comes next, and whatever today is very temporary because it's going to be different tomorrow. We all have that, and you have that incredibly intensified because of this.
Mm.
That's very hard. What helps your mental health? How have you adjusted the way you approach yourself as you navigate through this?
Yeah, I still feel like being busy is my best defense. And you know, it's for me learning to also allow room for rest because you know, you have to reset. And I was getting to that burnout stage with my work. You know, it was probably going to come to that conclusion ultimately, just the way that you know the world works with social media and you know aging out maybe of certain aspects of what I did. But I feel like the reason why a bookish community is so great for me is that books are truly the escape that I have chosen. That is the medicine, that is the remedy, that is the thing that keeps me sane. And knowing that my resting time can also be putting together, oh, like I'm going to ask this author if they want to be on and, you know, treating it still like work, but knowing that I'm honoring my body in the way that it needs to has been a wonderful way to kind of honor where I'm at. I take a lot of walks and my husband works remote. And so we do a lot of walking. And I feel like walking is really good for me to get outside a little bit and get out of my loop in my head sometimes. But, you know, I can't say that I do any of this perfectly in any regard, but I do the best I can to make the day as manageable as possible. And, you know, maybe that's escaping with TV sometimes. I actually, my favorite thing is, you know, I have goals that I set for extracurricular activities because that's who I am. But I see 52 films a year and I do 100 books a year. And so my 52 film project, I require on the worst day of my health to go to the movies by myself and just soak in that experience, like get the biggest buttery popcorn and, you know, take that solo trip for myself. And I treat it like a goal project. So, you know, our Patreon subscribers get to enjoy all the rewards from all my leisure. But that is like my happiest place. It's where I can really keep my body at a true resting place in one of those recliners at the movie theater. So I pick my worst day. Like I'll be like, it's typically, I mean, not to put any like goal on that, but it's usually on a Thursday. I've like hit my max. I'm like, okay, that's like the day that I'll go and like spend the morning at the movie theater. So I think it's just figuring out new ways and also changing your circle of people. That was also very helpful to me, like people that could really show up for me at this stage, which this is not the fun version, right? It was really fun to be my friend when I was on the celebrity circuit or enjoying all the rewards or like going on shoots and shooting commercials and doing a book and having book
Put me on
tours.
Pinterest, please.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the life. That's the friend I want to be adjacent to, right? I want to be in that circle. But are you here with this version of me? And a lot of people left. It was just too much because it felt like, is this going to be your thing all the time? And I think this is a very good weeding out process of finding like legitimate people who love and care for you is when you're in the weeds like this,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm in for the long haul, just so you know. I am here to lock arms with you, even if we're just laying down in the dark. Okay. From now until forever. You've got me. Walking is medicine. I love that. Probably sharing with your husband or holding hands as you go around the block, breathing the fresh air, getting some sun in your eyes. I love that kind of medicine. Going to the movies in the middle of the afternoon and getting a big buttery popcorn is medicine. I love that. I personally love and almost prefer to go to movies alone, to be honest, because I don't have to worry about the person next to me's interaction and I don't have to share that popcorn. So I love that too. You're setting goals for yourself with your reading and your movie watching. That's so type A. Like these are my recreational goals. These are my relaxing goals. And also, your body is telling you in some ways probably what we all need. I just read something today that said like 2 to 3 hours hard work every day, like go at it, like go to the gym and do that workout or invest in your work and do that deep work that you need to do. And the rest of the time, go slow and relax. Don't waste your time in that anxious middle. And I'm like, I spend so much time in that anxious middle, not getting something done, but also not completely relaxing, right? So when you're on and you feel it, you can go. And then most of the time, 70+% of the time can be rest and slow time. But you also have what I call your unicorn space, just because Eve Rodsky of Fair Play and the book Find Your Unicorn Space. And I've just done 2 workshops on this. It's top of mind, this creative pursuit of purpose. And even in the midst of pain, even in the midst of depression and grief and change, your work is also a bit your unicorn space, and you've created and carved out and prioritized that. So those are really beautiful lessons. And I can't help but wonder, I'm going to segue because your health journey sounds a lot like my sober journey. And I have to say, like, okay, so you found reading and books, but did you try alcohol? That's also quite an effective escape.
Yes, I did try alcohol. Yes.
How'd that go for you?
Well, it wasn't my best banner years. Although I would say that was a fun Amy to hang out with for a little bit. Not the messy part, but the good
tell me
part.
about
The
your
good
journey
times.
with alcohol. I'm curious how this plays in, and especially with EDS.
Yeah, I grew up in a religious home that alcohol was a forbidden kind of thing. And so I had no interest in ever pursuing that because that was just not part of my religious upbringing. I was definitely a wild child when I went to college. And, I did drink in college. And I would say that I was also a mom that was raising kids during the mommy wine culture, which I think we're all quite acquainted with at this point. But I remember it being such a big part of my identity. Like, I deserve this. I've earned this, everything that I had went through. And I was using that as a crutch a lot. And my social circle also was all doing it. So I didn't feel at any point that I was like the outlier in any kind of scenario. This was what we did as like a free time activity. I had a mom's group, and in that group, we had outings every week. We would do different kinds of things, book club, whatever that was. And we would always have drinking as part of the activities. I would say I was always the one that went too far with the drinking, and I can see that now. Like other people would be fine with just a few. And I would be like, why? Like, stop. We're having so much fun. But I think the one thing that I started to realize was as my health got worse, and I was telling everyone, oh, I'm doing everything I can to be better, I was still drinking. And I will say that there is a lot of stigmatism around pain medication, treating pain in this country because of the opioid epidemic. And I was denied, any kind of pain management care. I would go to doctor to get my pain treated, and no one would help me. I remember, just to highlight once again, my bones are rolling out of place. If you have ever had one single dislocation, you will remember it. But imagine you're doing that 4 or 5 times a day. Your bones are just not staying where they're supposed to. And I would be just bawling my eyes out in miserable pain. For an example, I went to see a practitioner to get help. And they had me waiting for months and months to see this guy. And I was so excited. I could hardly sleep the night before. I was like, this guy's going to help me. He's going to make my life better. And I went there and I explained what was going on with me. And I could tell right away that this was not the vibe. Like, he was not going to help me at all. And he said, you know what your new pain management strategy is? It's take 2 Aleve and put your feet up. And he walked out. And I remember meeting eyes with the nurse and just being like shell shocked. I went out to the car and I was bawling my eyes out. At this point, I have seen tons and tons of pain management specialists, doctors. No one would give any care to me regarding pain. They would just tell me, take Advil, do the best you can. It's not proven to help. And so I used alcohol as a crutch because no one was helping me get out of this. And it would get to the end of the day and it's like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I literally cannot take this pain. And so I used that, and I was trying so hard. I did a program called Curable, which is an app for people who are really trying to kind of rewire your brain into not thinking about the pain so much. And there were a lot of people in the group, a lot of people with migraines and things like that. It's actually designed for people with migraines. And I joined the boot camp program to try to, kind of maybe if I can get my brain rewired, I won't need this wine so much. I won't need these crutches in my life. But I did the program and I remember toasting myself. I even have a picture of it, which is kind of horrifying now that I think about it. But being like, I got through that program and like life will be better. And that was just right before 2020 when I ended up in the hospital. And so I was still continuing to use it as a crutch for my pain. And I was just not proud of myself with how I was doing that because I knew it wasn't to relax, to unwind. It was a vicious cycle. And I would wake up with the worst anxiety ever in the whole history of the world. My heart would be racing, it would like start me off at the races. Like, I already have heart problems. Now I'm like doing wine to unwind at night, waking up off to the races, ashamed of myself, just drinking way more than I needed to in the evenings. So I started out with just a app. I think it's called Sunnyside now, but it was an app to reduce the amount of drinks that you were having. And I like programmed in, something like, oh, I'd like to be down to, let's say 15 drinks a week. Which sounds crazy now, but I was consuming a lot, right? And that was like a very ambitious goal.
Right, conservative.
Right?
Yeah,
I was like, okay, because every night I'd be like, oh, 2 would slide into 3, like just finish the bottle of wine that we split. Right. Yeah. So I really wanted to do better. And I remember setting it and I did talk to my kid about it and he was very surprised. I think no one knew. And it wasn't like I was doing anything necessarily that was shameful or that I felt that everyone was noticing or any of that. It was just this like private internal struggle that I was dealing with every single night, knowing I have pain and I need my pain to stop. And I will say that anybody who hears my story is like, well, God, I'd be drinking. Like, I drink all the time, and people would just egg me on because they're like, you go through so much every single day. If my bones are rolling out, I totally drink. Who
You
wouldn't,
deserve it.
right?
It's
You
hard on
deserve it. You
yourself.
earned it. You
Yeah.
made it through your whole day like that. Like, that's so impressive. And so I just felt like I deserved it. And then I ended up getting a practitioner who was willing to treat my pain. And it's like, okay, now I'm getting my pain treated in a way that really makes sense, that helps me live the best life that I can. I have no excuses to be doing these shenanigans all the time. Like, there's no reason. So I started using the app and gradually just, decreasing a little bit by little bit by little bit. And it's been, I think, roughly 3 years since my last drink. And that's a decision that I made. And then I remember that I didn't know really how to talk about it because it wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't feel like I had like a lot of labels to it, and I didn't want to attach a label to it. Like, I'm like, am I sober now? Like, what does that mean? Like, do people, if I say I'm sober, will people think I was an alcoholic? Was I an alcoholic? Like, what does that even mean? And all of these labels I was really getting hung up on. But at the end of the day, what I know to be true is that it was not a helpful thing in my life. My anxiety was through the roof. The hormonal changes were happening at the same time. They were making everything this horrible storm. I did not feel good when I was doing it. And I knew that I could be better. I knew that that was my one thing that was holding me back from a lot of stuff. And that's when I started my podcast, because I was like, what am I going to do in the evenings if I'm not drinking? And I do think that's like the thing. It's like all this downtime. And that's when I would be like, oh, I just need a glass of wine. I need that glass of wine. And so I was like, what if I'm on YouTube teaching myself how to podcast? I'd watch all these like YouTube bros teach me how to do different skills and be like, you know what? I'll listen to you, like only in this format, but I will listen to you.
Right. Okay,
And
bro. What should I do?
yeah. And I started to like kind of get that confidence that, maybe this is what I do. And so I would drink tea in the evenings, watch, these things on how to podcast, try to build a podcast. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that it kept my brain busy so that I was not grabbing a glass of wine. It was truly like I became obsessed, because I needed an obsession to get out of that obsession, which was every night, like unwind with wine. And what was interesting about it is that I never pushed it on anyone in our house, but my husband and I, we seem to fuel each other a little bit, because it's like, oh, well, I would have a glass, you would have a glass, I have a glass, you have a glass. His wine consumption went down to almost zero, because he was just like, it's not very fun to do by myself, and noticing that I was making changes without putting pressure on anyone around me, that initiated a lot of change for other people. And so I started to talk a little bit about it. We hosted someone on the podcast, and I just said, like, there was nothing dramatic. It doesn't have to be dramatic. I just have anxiety, and it wasn't good for my anxiety. And other people started messaging me and saying, thank you for saying it like that. I have anxiety, and I now realize I've been doing that to myself too. And so it wasn't anything grand or big. And maybe that's kind of the reframing that more people need to hear. It doesn't have to be dramatic, right? It doesn't have to be this like horrible thing where everybody witnesses. It's just like, it was this quiet thing. I had a lot of discomfort about it. But for me, a big component of it was just, will you please treat my pain? So I'm not using this as a crutch. And once my pain was treated, I didn't find myself needing that either.
Mhm. I love that. Oh my gosh. It's so relatable. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is my mission to make it safe to evaluate and question your relationship with alcohol without giving yourself a label or deciding you want to quit forever. Nobody starts that way, right?
Yeah.
That sounds terrifying, me included. So, and we think, yeah, like you have to qualify to quit. You have to have a lawyer, a policeman, or a doctor involved, or a husband walking out the door or something in order to address it. But it's okay to just evaluate it. And you don't have to say, I'm never drinking again, just to take a break and see. But what I hear, so many similarities, is like I had pain too. My drinking escalated for self-medication also, but it was for grief. Yours was for this physical pain that you couldn't figure out. And mine was self-medicating for this grief. And now I know how to address grief. right? And I know that I let it live alongside me. And I bet you do too, because you have grief of who you used to be or the things you used to be able to do that you can't do, and the people you've lost along the way. And that story is so true too, because sobriety, like chronic pain, maybe attracts and repels people to your life. And I bet you have a new circle of folks that understand, and you've got a new community specific to that, as well as I do too, even though I was resistant to it for far too long, right? Because I don't need anybody, I don't need any help, all that thing. And then also you're, without realizing it, you're a sober influencer. One to your husband, we have the same story. I quit drinking and he lost 20 pounds. I'm like, really? I was the one that had a problem with it? Because I lost 0 pounds. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I was the drinker. So, I mean, he drinks very little now, so it's actually good and healthy for everyone. But since I was young, I had this thing of like, what to do in the evenings. I guess I always felt restless and unsettled. And like, speaking of my grandma who I just lost, if I was there like on a Sunday night and it started to get late and dark, that it was going to be almost time to shut the shades, and like the tick, tick, tick of 60 minutes would come on, I would get this like very homesick feeling of like, it's Sunday night and I'm here too late. And like, I want to go home, or whatever home is. And now, even like doing a sunset walk, that time of day, like dusk, and like you can see into people's houses, right? Like their lights are on, but their shades aren't shut yet. And you're like, what are they doing? What do people do in the evenings? Because I too am so restless. I'm such a busybody. I don't really know how to relax. I don't watch a lot of TV, although I'm practicing trying to binge watch. Like that is actually a goal for me.
I get it.
Like I have to put that. I'm like, I am going to succeed at finishing an entire series this weekend. I'm going to sit still. I'm going to really try to sit still, right? And so I used to drink, and then do my little family blog spot. And then I would just know that I couldn't publish it drunk. I'd have to like look at it in the morning and make sure I didn't overly say anything that I shouldn't have said or whatever. And now, of course, I have an entire business I can throw myself in, and books I can throw myself in, and a lot more hobbies. But that evening restless time, I think that is a lot of reason why we drink, because it slows our brain. It slows our thinking. And that kind of softens the edges. So alcohol serves a purpose, and so we go to it and it's effective and it kind of works before it doesn't. And then we have to recognize that, like that anxiety in the morning, that heart pounding feeling, that shame, that's all included in that experience. So the return on investment is typically not good, but it's a little bit fool's gold because it's pretty fast and effective in the beginning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now we've got some pain management. You've got podcasting that you can do in the evenings. What is ahead for you? How has it changed from your initial diagnosis to kind of how you've navigated now living with it and teaching your children and changing your social circle? Where are you at today with this?
I have had a rough past year. So I had a lot of setbacks this year. The osteoporosis thing really threw me for a loop with my care. And, that's the frustrating part, because I did feel really good about where I was at, and then kind of got thrown back into the fires again. And I think the difference now is that I have better coping strategies than I did the first time I got thrown in the fire. Like, I'm not looking for wine in the evenings or anything like that. I know, that I can get through this, but I think the hard part has been witnessing my children are now starting to have those kinds of issues that I have, and so being present for them while also caring for yourself is hard. And, it's a balance. And I'm just so glad that my kids have answers, and that they have a mom who like made it her like thesis to like try to solve the riddle on this. The things that I know that are in my head, like I became like the go-to guru. If you couldn't, get in with a doctor, like people would reach out and be like, oh, you should talk to her because she has figured out a lot of different things. And I'm really grateful that I have that kind of brain, that I want to be a sponge and try to solve it as best as I can. So that has been very helpful for this stage. But, every day is unexpected. Like nothing ever works out exactly. I don't know. And I think I'm leaning more into being a last minute planner and leaning into being more spontaneous with the people in my life, like not telling them if I'm going to like show up for something or, just be that person that's this unexpected surprise and not feeling like I'm letting people down all the time and just kind of letting my body dictate what I need to do and being okay to be left out sometimes is a hard thing, but knowing that I'm honoring where my body's at now is really important to me and making space for the things that matter the most to me. What do I want to achieve versus, always pushing myself the way that I did before. I'm much kinder to my body in those ways, holding true to bedtimes, holding true to, unwinding the way that I know that I need to, and just being present for myself in a way that I was not before. And it's hard. It takes a little bit of discipline that I don't feel like I have discipline in those regards. And so maybe it's an age thing and leaning into I'm okay, sitting on my recliner and enjoying these hours that I get to have at the end of the day instead of pushing all the time. And it means stepping down from a lot of things, being the surprise volunteer instead of being the person who volunteers all the time. Oh, there's something going on. Today is a good day. I'll show up. Or saying, no, today is the movie day that I planned, to allow myself to have once a week. So it's being a little bit more fluid about my routines. That's something that has been difficult as a type A person.
I love it. So many silver linings. Wow. One, be your own advocate. You've had to really raise your own awareness, be your own advocate for yourself, and also fueled for your future, for your kids and the other generations coming up. That's beautiful. Spontaneity. That is so awesome for a planner that you are forced to be a surprise. Let it be a surprise and kind of lean into that. I love that. And mostly, I think all of life personally is a journey back to yourself, a journey back to listen to yourself and what your relationship with yourself is. And it sounds like a lot more acceptance, being a lot more gentle, less of a drill sergeant, and finding worth not only in performance and production and all these things that you're used to, but in being soft and letting yourself be is the best way. Those are beautiful life lessons for everyone. What do you want our listeners to know? How can we support you, your journey, your advocacy work? Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I would love if you are a reader to join me over on my podcast. I run the Book Gang podcast, which celebrates debuts, backlist books, and under the radar book gems. And our Patreon community is where it's at. We run a book club and we have all the books announced. So I'll give a link to Heather if you think you might want to join a book club. We have all 12 picks that are out, and we will be meeting with the authors to talk about their books. And that's where we also do our Fully Booked show, which is where we share what we're loving and loathing every month, and also all the book adaptation news and all the fun stuff like that. But we also have a lot of fun things, like I do a playlist for every month of music. So some people just join for the playlist because I have a music background. So I really enjoy putting that together. And I just have so much fun over in there. I get to be fully creative. It's kind of my own little Etsy shop for our patrons. And I really, really encourage you to be part of the community.
I love it so much. Thank you for your time today. I'll have everything, of course, in the show notes so everyone can connect with you. I appreciate you so much, Amy.
Thank you, Heather.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. Don't forget to download my free ebook, The 12 Truths to Change Your Life. Do it for the plot. We'll see you in the next episode. Lots of love.